What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, a man who literally makes it rain on himself, Brandon Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Nothing much, Mike. Good morning. Happy New Year to you, Aubrey.
Happy New Year.
With us also, as always, early in the week here, super producer as well, Aubrey Marcinko. Aubrey, how are you feeling after watching Brandon cleanse the entire show environment here with some sort of foreign spray?
It just, it was therapeutic, you know? I might not be there, but I felt the calm.
That is true. I think we all felt the, for everyone who has downloaded, subscribed, rated, and reviewed, and just listens to this as a podcast, Brandon spraying God knows what over God knows how much of the room that he's in right now. Like, what was that? Are you okay? Is this like Kyrie Irving?
Thank you for asking. I am big up on the new health products when it comes to cleaning things. And this is that new Clorox disinfecting mister. Okay, you can put it on your clothes. You can put it on hard surfaces, soft surfaces. Let it sit. It does have very strong particles. It gets up in your nostrils a little bit.
I don't know. I hear Clorox, and I feel like you shouldn't be breathing that in.
Yeah.
Well, it's 99%. This is COVID back, y'all. And I'm trying to get away from that. SARS, all that type of stuff.
It looked like you were treating that as an inhalant, which it is certain. I just want to caution you. It is a new year, new you. That it means It's also a you that I would like to keep around.
Am I the only person that sniffs glue before we start recording?
Oh my God! Well,
I have my pack of markers right here. Favorite one to start with is the raspberry.
Sharpies.
Oh, mine are just cigarettes, so now I feel lame. We got a great show for you guys today. Obviously, the College Football Playoff National Championship is going off tonight. Georgia and TCU will have picks coming up for that. We'll look ahead at yet another person around the NFL who's decided gambling's for them, even if it is expressly forbidden by the NFL itself. And a look back at picks from this weekend. But we also had the last weekend of the NFL's regular season, in which, in and of itself, is one of those things. This is one of the first NFL seasons in a while where I'm like, no, this felt like 18 weeks. We got a lot of great time out of it. I am certainly sad because knowing the playoffs starting means we are closer and closer to football being over, along with the national championship in college. But this isn't one of those where college football season flew by for me. The NFL season, long, winding. I felt like we got every bit out of this, but maybe I'm the crazy one here. Brandon, do you disagree on that?
No, I think that's pretty standard. The NFL season is like a long movie. You can check out at certain point in times, and then something happens later on, and it's like, oh, I missed something earlier. I'll read the article, but I'm just here for the fireworks, and we got a chance to see them.
Just here for a great fight scene. That's all you need. Just a great fight scene mixed into all that. And so in honor of the NFL's regular season ending, the playoffs getting ready to go, seeding all decided here, which we'll get to over the course of this. Brandon wanted to play a little game called blocking and tackling. It's the foundation of the sport when it comes down to it. Football is about winning your one-on-one matchup, which usually involves blocking and or tackling. And we wanted to get back to the fundamentals, wave goodbye to some teams that will no longer be a part of our time going forward, at least not with the actual on-football field stuff, and go block or tackle. So Aubrey is going to read us off the score, what happened in the game, and we're going to decide if we want to tackle, take a look, go further with that game, or block that game and keep it moving with that. Why are you making the stinky face at me, Brandon?
I just wanted to say, before we get started with the game, yesterday, I'm wearing all black today. I'm in mourning. Yesterday was the last Super Bowl, NFL Sunday until September 10th. September 10th of 2023, this year, that the Lord has given us. How are you feeling?
You mean like last full NFL Sunday, like besides the playoffs?
This is like, the last full 13 plus games on a Sunday.
For me, it's that feeling for some people who get so excited for like that good holiday run where you have Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas, you've got New Year's. It's over, Like, there's things I had to look forward to, like, going out in shorts again once it gets warm. But it's like that feeling, like there's a feeling with football season, and for me, it's gone.
I think I would describe the start of the postseason as when the calendar hits December, because even in November for the people, well, hear me out on this one, because the people that even don't subscribe to putting Christmas decorations up as early as I do, there's still that feeling of anticipation that's building towards the holiday. You're preparing for it in some ways. You're making travel plans. You're getting ready for your family to come in town. You're buying gifts in advance of the holiday. Once the calendar hits December, you know you're really on the clock. There's a sense of urgency that builds with these things before the ultimate culmination of the day. And that, to me, is the postseason. Is now the sense of urgency is hit. We know that we're playing for keeps at this point, and every successive week becomes that much more important. So I feel like the NFL season lead up is like once you get into November, post Halloween, for a lot of people, the bite in the air starts. It might even be snowing already in some places, and some people like me have already thrown their lights up to let you know it is the season. It is the reason for the season. So
I like that logic. I don't like it because this week was a good tune-up for the playoffs, because every NFL game kind of doesn't matter, and I'm used to watching them that way. The ones that do matter, it's a little bit jarring once you get to the fourth quarter. You're like, oh, shit, this is it. This is the last time I'm watching this team possibly.
Well, and we did have some games that were actual winning in playoff games. We were in the spot where we now had it whittled down to games that we could easily help, and we avoided the weird coin flip scenarios that came off as a result of everything that happened with this last week, which we will get to. So, again, everyone, thank you. Download, subscribe, rate, and review. Make sure you check out the DraftKings YouTube channel, all that good stuff. With that being said, let's block or tackle and try and get through one last time the slate of the games, as Brandon pointed out, is the last regular season of the NFL weekend. So, Aubrey, what game do we have coming up here first?
All right, getting us started, we have Chiefs Raiders 31-13. Note on that, we have McKinnon becoming the first running back in NFL history to have 6 consecutive games with a receiving touchdown. Snaps for him.
Yeah, big time snaps for him. Shocked in a season where Austin Eckler set the franchise record in the Chargers for receptions by a running back, that it wouldn't be him that managed to do that too. So Jerick McKinnon, one time for Jerick McKinnon, who was a part of the trio from the Kansas City Chiefs that helped me win a co-fantasy championship in my dynasty league. I had him, Isaiah Pacheco, and Travis Kelce all on my team, and they all scored into the teens at the very least in the last game of the championship season last week. Remarkable effort, fellas. Proud of all of you. Bonuses coming at the end of the year. They've certainly earned it. So, pump for him there. Brandon, my favorite part of this game, where things were in hand pretty quickly. It was what we talked about.
Whoa.
What?
Are we blocking or tackling this?
Oh, we're tackling this. Sorry. I completely abandoned the paradigm of this game almost immediately. Yes, we'll tackle this game because the thing that drew the most reaction from this game, that the Chiefs were always it felt like, in control of here. The Jared Stidham thing was kind of what we expected. One game, a player that people didn't have a lot of film on. This game, he devolved into trying to do the Justin Fields where he just dropped back and ran every time. And it worked until it didn't. We saw the most disrespectful thing of the NFL weekend occur in this game. The Andy Reid-led red zone shenanigans from the Chiefs were back on display. The ring around the Rosie Chiefs huddle into the Wildcat formation.
That was so funny.
It was incredible, and it was simultaneously the most disrespectful but also beautifully executed moment on earth. They locked arms in a circle, they all spun around, and then seamlessly flowed into the formation, ran a wildcat play that ended up scoring. It was then called back on a holding call on Creed Humphrey, their center, which was nonsense. And so they responded by scoring the very next play on a jet sweep just to rub it in their face. But I saw Marshall Newhouse, who's been on the podcast here, 11-year NFL veteran, former TCU Horn Frog, who said, when I saw him, he goes, honestly, if I'm on defense after that, gotta fight after that play. Like someone has to pay for this moment, because they treated that like some backyard bullshit football.
I've never been, it's on my bucket list to be at a game where just something so ridiculous and like out of pocket happens. And this was definitely one of those moments for me where I was like, damn, I wish I would have had a ticket to that game. I watched it like 5 times. I was like, this is hilarious. This is gold. This is good.
It honestly speaks to what you were talking about, though, Mike, that the Philly special plays dead. Like, we need to do more. We need to do something else. And obviously, Andy Reid was going to be the first person to do it. But how you describe that play is basically how people describe Patrick Mahomes on a football field. Like, honestly, so disrespectful, like, so impressive, but also you just want to quit afterwards because, like, how can they do that and execute?
That's the thing is they clearly spent enough reps on that in practice to have it down cold, because in order to do that, you've got to know your huddle structure. For anyone that's unfamiliar, your huddle structure when every time you go in is designed. Like when you get install handed out to you in training camp, it tells every player exactly where they're supposed to be in the huddle. So you've got that design that's pretty cookie cutter. This is a wildcat play, so Patrick Mahomes isn't going to be at the quarterback spot. So you've altered that design, and you've got to know exactly when to have whoever's job it is to break the huddle, do it at the exact right time while you're spinning around. All of this is very difficult spatial awareness in normal times, let alone in the middle of a goddamn NFL football game. And so the fact that they practice that play enough to go out and execute like that, the Chiefs under Andy Reid, who are well known for having a policy where players can come in and offer up a play that they've drawn up or designed that usually gets bust out in the red zone by Andy Reid. We've seen them do like full line dance shifts. We've seen them put Travis Kelce at quarterback. This is just the latest installment of that. But again, they had such little respect for the Raiders as an opponent that they spent multiple reps on that in practice during the week. I applaud them. That is why they are the 1 seed in the AFC this year. Unsurprisingly, because with that level of temerity and unmitigated gall, how can you not succeed?
I mean, it really did remind me of Ring Around the Posy, Pocketful of Posy, like, you know, in the talking about it's like a nursery rhyme about a plague. And the Kansas City Chiefs are a plague.
This is one of those moments that makes me think of the 73-win Golden State Warriors, the season where people decided, oh, this isn't so cute anymore. These guys are kind of assholes about this stuff. Yes. I wonder if we do get to that point ever with Kansas City where they become... It really is, where you go from playful and likable to you win too much. If the Chiefs manage to go and somehow win the Super Bowl in this season, I say somehow, they're the 1 seed. There's a high likelihood that this is possible. If they manage to do that, I wonder if we're at that inflection point for some people. I always like the Warriors. I like Steph talking his shit, the mouthpiece hanging out, all that different stuff. And I love this from the Chiefs. I just wonder if people even outside of the AFC West may stop loving that.
Yeah, the problem is the biggest villains for the Chiefs are relatives of Patrick Mahomes.
That is true, but that's been a relatively quiet conversation this year. So I feel like,
well, I think he did. I think he took care of that. Well, you know, she has a child now, so she's busy, and then his brother, he sat down and told him, like, hey, no more.
Whatever it was, it has been very quiet around the Chiefs for the majority of this season, outside of the rampant winning and the record setting and all of the things that come along with having Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. So they had a pretty easy one there. The Raiders side, their season done. Derek Carr's tenure likely done in Las Vegas. Who ends up becoming the quarterback next for them, going to be that conversation. But one thing I can say is any sort of notion that maybe Jared Stidham was the future, no, that's like, again, Jared Stidham, good for him, punched his ticket to continue, I'm sure, be a backup in this league for a while. That's not going to be a serious future plan there. Aubrey, what game we got next?
All right, we have the Jags and Titans 2016. I will say after this Jags win, I stayed off social media. It was like people from Jacksonville just took over my Instagram account. That's all I saw.
Yeah, Duval was out here in full force in this one.
For that reason, block.
Yeah, we're gonna block this one. It was a really gross football game to watch. I'm glad it ended with Jacksonville going to the postseason and not the Josh Dobbs-led Titans. Ooh. That would have been an affront to all of our eyes. So excited about that one. It is a true testament to Urban Meyer, the fact that, again, he was able to have this mostly same team. I guess they made some pretty sizable offseason moves, so I will give that grace. But the fact that he was able to have a team that now won the division look that bad last year, we should let him coach the Chiefs and see how far this can go. Also, Justin Herbert, and I saw a graphic of Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert because I think they're getting set to play in the wild card round. And I just wanted to say that Trevor Lawrence looks like Justin Herbert, who took an edible. So
you said looks like or plays like?
Well, both.
Okay. 'Cause I was gonna say
both long-haired, tall white guys. Justin Herbert's just a little more robotic in the movement. Both really good, incredibly physically impressive. Trevor's just a little more fluid.
Yeah, it's like Justin Herbert's like the guy that like when you find out he's going drinking, everyone wants to come out and see it.
Yes, exactly. Everyone's like, oh man, like we're going to see him let his hair down. Trevor just has his hair down like that all the time.
All right, we'll keep it rolling. All right, so next one we have Falcons Bucks 30-17.
Yeah, so I'll go tackle on this one. So the Buccaneers had already clinched their playoff spot. They had already won that division, so there was no way for that to be improved in this game. They sort of phased players out as it went along. Tom Brady gave way to Blaine Gabbert and company in this game. They started slowly kind of pulling guys out there. The only reason I wanted to bring this up, twofold. Number one, our good friend Kyle Rudolph.
Yes.
Buccaneers tight end, former Notre Dame tight end, one of my roommates in college, one of Brandon's closest friends in college, caught his 50th career touchdown pass in this game from Tom Brady. Awesome moment there. Kyle had been, in and out of the lineup as an active player during the course of this season in that tight end room. Obviously, a lot of shuffling in that skill room anyway because of injury through the course of the year. Very cool moment. Very excited. Congratulations to Rudy on that front, Brandon.
Huge accomplishment for him. So proud of him. You couldn't draw it out anyway because he was so special when you first got a chance to see him. But I will say, Tom Brady definitely pulled Todd Bowles aside at some point in time in that game. He was like, okay, guys, this defense is coming at me. You see them try to tackle me. Can we get me off of this field? Where's Blaine?
There was a play very early in the game where the Falcons brought a blitz, and you even heard the broadcasters like, Tom turned fully away from that and said, I am not about to take this hit because he is looking at and seeing what I'm seeing, which is an NFC playoff picture that is laying out very well for that team. They are getting set to play a Dallas Cowboys team that we'll talk about is limping into the postseason and as always is primed for a weird first round exit and then would I believe get the winner of the Giants Vikings game. I'm looking up and I'm going, oh my God, the Buccaneers are going to find their way into the NFC Championship game, aren't they? After all of this wailing and consternation with Brady this year, that motherfucker's going to be right back where he was.
Would you expect anything less, though? I mean, honestly.
No.
He bothers me, though, because he does care about the records and he acts like he doesn't. The only reason he stayed in the game as long as he did against the Falcons was to set the completion records for the NFL, beating his record.
Yes, he beat his own single season completions record, which is also insane to think about with how much of an abject disaster this Bucs season has felt like. The fact that they won the division, are in the playoffs, and Brady set the single season completions record, all in the most disappointing season record-wise of his career, is the most Tom Brady thing of all time.
The TV
A monster.
Effect.
Right. It's the worst. All right, what do we got next, Aubrey?
Bills, Patriots, 35-23.
Sold
out crowd. Yes, sold out crowd. Many of them obviously wearing number 3 in support, holding up red hearts in his honor. Let's talk about this one. This is a special one, a special win.
This was some true blue movie stuff. So as Aubrey pointed out, Damar Hamlin obviously was going to be heavy on everyone's mind in this game. He had gotten a chance to now speak to the team prior to this game, I believe via FaceTime or something of that ilk. He has been active on Twitter now too, which has been really cool. Like we got to watch him live tweet through this game and sent out the picture before. That sort of handmade heart has kind of become the gesture that is synonymous with Damar Hamlin at this point. Posted the picture from the hospital like that in his Bills gear, getting a chance to watch that game. And for the very first play of the game, for the city of Buffalo that has again dealt with so much as a city overall in this past calendar year, and then this last week on top of all of that as such recent trauma, to walk into this and the very first play of the game, Nyheim Hines take this all the way back to the house for the kickoff return on the opening touchdown, felt like some storybook stuff. Everybody had chills watching. Everybody knew we were watching something special. There were questions all week, understandably, about what the Bills' mental state would be going into this game after seeing that happen. Tre'Davious White after the game talked about how this week's been a shit show and said this has been trauma for Damar Hamlin as a defensive defensive back. So he's in the same room as Trey White. And he's like, every time I close my eyes, I saw that setting with him. And I saw what happened to Damar Hamlin happening. And so that is the backdrop for these players preparing for this game, makes all of this, the degree of difficulty, so insanely high against a division opponent, against a Belichick coach team, and against all that. Beyond impressed with what Buffalo was able to do.
This is one of the things that I love about sports, and that I've always loved about sports, is that it's almost like the entire country, we're all just like honorary Bills fans now. When something happens in a sports community, it's just so cool to see everybody rally around and root for those people, even if it's like their sworn off enemy for the last like 30 years. They'll become a fan suddenly. And that's one thing that I thought was so cool about this game.
I had a Patriots fan text me. It's like, am I even rooting for my team today? And I get it. I get the sentiment.
I think the gestures were important for the NFL because every player that wore number 3 met in the middle and had a moment and talked, and like that was cool. But the gameplay, like what actually happened, first play of the game for that Bills game, it's like what Josh Allen said during that moment. He was running around telling his teammates, "God is real." That's what he was feeling at the time. He said it's been 3 years and 3 months since the last time the Buffalo Bills took a kickoff return to a touchdown. So like this was just really special for that franchise, for that team. And in my opinion, not talking about Josh Allen, I think God's a football fan. You know, they were talking about the football gods, the basketball gods, all things. I think the real one, the one that everyone's praying to, that one's a football fan. The universe is a football fan, whichever we want to call it.
Whatever name you give it, you mentioned the threes too. The 3 on every NFL field on the 30-yard lines were all outlined in blue for Damar Hamlin on every NFL stadium over the weekend. There, you saw a lot of players on the Bills every time there was a touchdown throwing up the threes in the end zone as part of a celebration for that. So clearly he was on everybody's mind across the country, but certainly for this Buffalo team who went out there and looked super potent, right? Like you saw a bunch of vintage Josh Allen plays in this game, the adjusted scramble touchdown to downtown John Brown, who's activated and back in the mix. Like John Brown is one of those guys. I enjoy the sort of Deshaun Jackson class of really fast players that just continue to cash NFL checks for this reason. Like at some point you can break glass in case of emergency, pull out John Brown. It's the Ted Ginn Jr. effect.
Ooh,
like
yes.
Ted Ginn Jr. would just pop up on a team randomly for the last few years of his career and do something incredibly fast, even at his big age. That is going to continue to be John Brown like it was in this game.
That's what we all wanted Darius Hayward-Bay to be, but didn't turn out.
Man, DHV was a good dude. DHV was a good dude. Man, another one. That's a Lebitard show bit right there. Just sitting around naming very fast players that I'm sure any of the Davis family wish had been Raiders, which Darius Hayward-Bay was at one point. So it tracks.
Okay, but let's get back to this game because the Patriots are a good football team. That was one thing that I thought while watching that game was like, ooh, this defense. And that's why it was such a special moment for the kickoff return because the Patriots special teams is the thing that's the most impenetrable armor to try to get through in the NFL. So I was impressed with the Patriots after watching that game.
Well, Nyheim Hines, to your point about special teams, became just the 11th player in NFL history with 2. He ended up returning another one, 101 yards for a touchdown in this game. The 11th player in NFL history to return 2 kickoffs for scores in a game. The first since Leon Washington did it for the Seahawks in 2010. But yeah, Brandon, that was for all of the conversation, understandably, about the Patriots offense, because you're right, the defense has been DVOA-wise one of the top 3 or 5 in the league for most of the season. And they showed out again, got a lot of pressure on Josh Allen. Matthew Judon especially was great in that regard. The special teams, as you pointed out, well-known and well-versed, but the offense was able to move the ball. That was the one thing that was concerning for me looking towards the Bills in the postseason is that team, I couldn't tell, was this the Bills not playing up to the level that we've been used to from them? Obviously, no Von Miller, as there has been for weeks now, lost for the season. The rest of that group, Greg Rousseau early in that game, notched a sack against Mac Jones, but they were not only able to move the ball on the ground, Mac Jones also had some impressive passes to Devontae Parker in that game down the field.
Louisville's finest. 2 touchdowns on his return. So
they still need to make changes. Like, you cannot have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in whatever form that was this year calling plays for that offense. That was abundantly clear over the long haul of the season, but the Patriots went out on their sword. We're not seeing a Belichick team in the playoffs the way New England will not be in this now. So very shocking there. But again, this game was about so much more than what went on the field, and just really happy for those Buffalo players. For everyone else, we talked about, from the media perspective, you got to fill airtime with something that is difficult to talk about beyond a certain point. It was traumatic for people that watched, and everyone sort of had to think about this moment and their relationship with the sport in a different way. But it was never going to be what it was for the guys in that locker room, the guys that were his teammates, the guys that were on the field for that moment. And the fact that they've all been very candid about how they had to process this trauma, what the effect it had on their game week preparation was, and they were able to go out and get a positive result after getting positive news about their teammate and their brother, is the happiest version of an ending to a story that is not, this isn't some Hallmark movie. This isn't some Disney movie. This is a guy's freaking life. There's no made up part of this. This is a young man's life, and he's still got a ways to go to get back to living it normally. But this was as close to a happy ending for the moment in our little bubble of sports as we were capable of mustering, and that part kicked ass.
Yeah, and we heard that DeMar Hamlin broke the team down on FaceTime at the end of the game. So, so good to hear how well he's doing, and obviously to see it in the form of him tweeting about the games was special, like you mentioned. But it's good just to know that he's heading in the right direction.
Definitely. All right, Aubrey, what do we got next?
Vikings Bears 29-13.
I'm going to say block this game. This is exactly what we expected from the Nathan Peterman-led Chicago Bears. This a Vikings team that managed to go out and get a win when nothing was expected of them against a team that was trotting out their backup quarterback in a game where the Bears were far more concerned about the race for the number one pick that they were in with the Houston Texans, that they won. So congratulations to the Chicago Bears, the proud recipients of the number one overall pick in the NFL draft.
I didn't appreciate Chris Hansen doing all that. Just all that first round draft pick talk when the Texans game was going on with the Bears. Like, I don't. It
was
that.
Compelling. It's the part of the. It's the part. Brandon, your job as a broadcaster is to give the story that the fans are concerned about, and the fans watching those games were concerned about the number one overall pick.
But why?
Because they're bad teams, and that's all they have to hope for, is that some miraculous 22-year-old savior is going to come in the draft and help them.
Bad teams draft poorly. So they have the first chance to F up in the draft. Like, I don't understand the.
But that's not how most fans think of it. The draft is I got to cover the draft for a while during the back half of my time at ESPN. It's hope sold like cocaine. It is people dealing hope in a way that is unhealthy and unsustainable, but it feels good in the moment, and don't begrudge people their good time around there.
Cocaine.
So I'm just yeah.
Cocaine.
Cocaine. Cocaine. About that. Stuff feels good going down. You're gonna pay for it later.
Yep.
So I will opt to block that game. We're gonna have to watch the Vikings play at least one more game. I think probably multiple, because I think they will beat the Giants. But yeah, I'm good on that front on that game. Congratulations to Chicago for your number one overall pick. You've got your quarterback. Maybe think about trading back and acquiring more resources. You got a bunch of other stuff you got to fix.
Interesting. Okay.
We'll second that. Next, we've got Bengals, Ravens, 27-16. Can we talk about the coin flip?
Oh, we must talk about the coin flip.
I'd rather not. I want to block this game personally. That's me.
Well, I want to tackle this game, Brandon, so we're going to have to sit in this one for a little bit. Okay. So as Aubrey pointed out, one of the alternate playoff scenarios going into this weekend, where because the Bills and Bengals game was canceled and not going to be made up, the alternate plans had to be made for the playoff picture, which includes the possibility, given certain circumstances, that an AFC Championship game might be played at a neutral site, and the possibility that were a certain number of events able to occur, which would have had to include the Baltimore Ravens beating the Cincinnati Bengals and those two meeting in the wild card round, that home field in that game would have then been decided by a coin flip. And as the week wore on, you saw an increasingly vocal Cincinnati Bengals fan group and player group talk about how that was unfair to the team, yada, yada, yada. And so going into this game where, again, that would have been predicated on a scenario where they lost to the Anthony Brown quarterbacked Baltimore Ravens, the undrafted rookie quarterbacking the Ravens team that was also resting critical starters. No J.K. Dobbins in this game, no Mark Andrews in this game, is why those complaints were going to well, it was one of the reasons. Those complaints were going to fall on deaf ears for anyone outside of Cincinnati because the whole country looked at this situation rightly and said, hey, the NFL is going to try and do the best they can. This is a complicated scenario that's going to be TLDR for most people. Like, I'm sorry that happened to you or congratulations type thing. No one was going to pay attention to all that shit. And only so many people were going to care about the Bengals team that, again, all they had to do to avoid that coin flip was beat the Anthony Brown-led resting their starters Ravens, which they did. But it led to the best celebration of the weekend, which was Bengals running back Joe Mixon walking into the end zone, I believe pulling an actual coin out of his sock, akin to the old Chad Ochocinco celebrations or old TO celebrations of pulling out the Sharpie out of the sock, and then promptly punting it into the crowd. Basically, he did the fake pantomime coin flip, caught it, and then punted it into the crowd as to say, bleep that coin flip. And however you felt about their response to that, that's an A1 celebration. A1 in idea, A1 in execution, A1 all around.
My biggest issue was, like when Jair Alexander did it with Justin Jefferson, hit the gritty on the first incompletion. That was the first touchdown, Mike. Like, I didn't think the game was put away at that point in time. For him to act like, I don't know, they were the better team. Yeah, okay, that's fair. I'm hating.
Yeah, Brandon, your team wasn't trying to win this game. Like, they openly prioritized health for the postseason.
It's still bad muscle memory chemistry watching them lose the game. They lost it.
Yeah, because they didn't have a real interest in winning it.
Sounds like a bad strategy to win a game to me.
Either way, incredible. Also, again, we talk about mental fortitude here. Cincinnati playing on the same field where that accident with Jamar Hamlin happened 6 days ago. Like, that team obviously was there, also processed trauma. T. Higgins, who went down briefly in this game, took a big hit in this one. Thankfully, saw him get back up. Obviously, T. Higgins had to process a lot in this game. Took a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, but T. Higgins obviously bore the weight of that. And I know Damar Hamlin's family reached out to him to make sure he knew he wasn't at fault for any of this. And so many people rightly rushed to his aid, wrapped their arms around him, and made sure that player felt okay. It had to be a tremendously trying week for so many of them. You saw those shirts that went viral that they had made of the Cincinnati 513 area code with the 3 outlined in Bills blue for Damar Hamlin. So the Bengals also a lot of credit for their response to this situation as well. Cincinnati, once Buffalo beat New England too, they didn't have any shot at the 2 seed in the AFC, so kind of knew that in real time. But Brandon, the interesting thing is because for Cincinnati, they're one of the teams that we expect to be able to do this. For the Ravens, it's interesting. Lamar Jackson has not practiced since December 4th after injuring his PCL. He was once again in street clothes for this game. Tyler Huntley, who was banged up, was in street clothes for this game. This feels pretty dire on a lot of levels for a player in Lamar Jackson who this team was not able to sign to a long-term deal beforehand. Like, do you as a Ravens fan feel like you've seen the last of Lamar Jackson in a Ravens uniform?
Mike, I tried to block this a long time ago. What are you doing? Ask me a question about no, I don't feel that way. I don't, because we got the playoffs.
Why? But that's my question. Do you think after not practicing for this entire time that he's actually going to come back? Because as people have pointed out, PCL injury, while it's not damning, like the timeline's different for everyone, this is an incredibly dynamic quarterback, one whose rushing ability is a huge lifeblood for this team, and one who's also in a contract year. Like, he comes out and lays it on the line and gets hurt. Unfortunately, he's just subverting his own value that's already been at odds with what the team's value of him is.
Well, that's why I think I'm going to see him out there, because he has to go make money for himself.
Brandon's got a hold of Brandon got a hold of the cocaine.
Hey,
he did. This is that narcotic.
You ain't lying. That's the only thing I do the Hope Cane for, is for my Baltimore Ravens. Other than I don't touch the stuff.
It's just interesting. Dangerous thing.
It is. It is a very dangerous thing. I don't know. It's just fascinating to consider the position that Lamar is in, because I could see both sides of that, where we know players are wired to want to go out there and play. But for a guy that's had to represent himself, that has been so intimately involved in the negotiations for himself in this contract with this team for so much of this season, that's been the story, to now be sitting here banged up and not feeling his best. I'm sure there's an internal struggle of, hey, I want to go out there and try and lay it on the line here because I'm a football player. I'm wired to play football and try and go win, but I also have to protect my own future, because if I don't, nobody else will.
Yeah, but what future is he protecting, Mike? Is he protecting his future on the NFL
The one
field,
where he can
or is he protecting
Yes.
his future off the NFL field?
I mean, both of those are inextricably linked. His future on the NFL field and his ability to go out there and be healthy and play either for Baltimore or for another team who might pony up and be able to sign him unless they start to play the franchise tag game is inextricably linked to his ability to take care of his life off of the football field by making the life-changing sums of money that come with these second contracts, especially for quarterbacks.
Okay.
I'll help you out,
I wanna
Brandon.
talk
We'll go
about
to
this
the
right
next
now.
one. We'll go to the next one.
We'll have plenty more time to talk about that as we lead into game week, because that will obviously the biggest story. It's going to be a rematch of this game, so it's going to be Bengals and Ravens in Cincinnati, because we don't have to do the coin flip anymore in the wild card round, and we are expecting to see again they rested J.K. Dobbins, rested Mark Andrews, Tyler Huntley. I'm sure if this was do or die, would probably have been more in the conversation to get back out there, and the mystery of Lamar Jackson will all be big stories heading into this week. So, Aubrey, what do we got next?
I'll take it from here, Brandon, because my Colts.
Ooh.
My Colts. Texans Colts, 32-31. My Colts have lost their last 7 games, threw 20 interceptions, committed 34 turnovers, and gave up 60 sacks for the season.
And
Moment of
lost the
silence.
number 1 pick by winning this game. Or no, sorry, the Texans lost the number 1 pick by winning this game. The Colts might just be done with the Jeff Saturday thing here. Aubrey,
He needs to go back to the Subway commercials.
I do wonder if, I was thinking about like commercials and television just in general. I was like, oh man, does Jeff Saturday just go back to the ESPN job after this? Like,
Which I'm
we
just
see
kidding.
for most.
I love Jeff Saturday. Like,
we
I
all love Jeff Saturday, but
He's
this
great, but
this went famously bad.
Yeah.
After that first game against the Raiders, this all went really, really sideways.
But didn't we think that it was going to because of them hiring Jeff Saturday? All due respect to his football knowledge and all the things he's done.
I didn't. See, this is where I sniffed the Hope Kane. This is where I was like, you know what? Maybe Jeff Saturday can do something here. He had that when they were questioning him, and he was like, look, I played football. I know football. I was like, okay, he's right. Let's give this guy a chance. I did. I really tried hard.
All-time winner of the press conference, Jeff Saturday.
Yes. True. Yeah.
Undefeated in the press conference.
He won something.
And again, Aubrey, to your point, that team was never really set up to be successful. There was a reason that they were in a situation tumultuous enough to where they thought about firing their head coach, is because their offensive line, which was supposed to be the strength of the team, wasn't up to the standard that they had in that building. Matt Ryan looked as old as we've seen him and pretty cooked. Sam Ehlinger wasn't really an alternative that really helped. Nick Foles also did not have fun out there. And so all that went pretty bad.
It just reminded me of that old game, Oregon Trail, where like by the time you get out west, half of your family's just been bitten by snakes or died from typhoid or whatever those old diseases were. But like that's what it felt like at this point. Like it's just dragging along. Your wagon has one wheel. You've got one horse left.
Hey, when you
tried to ford the river, you were carrying too much buffalo meat.
Listen, when you're out there trying to feed your family off of squirrel meat,
things are gonna go wrong.
Yeah.
Things are gonna go terribly wrong.
Didn't you ever do that, though? Because you could go hunting in that game and you would just over-hunt buffalo and be carrying thousands of pounds of meat, and your wagon obviously can't sustain that.
Yeah. No. It's like you either let go of little Mary, who just got bit by a snake, you leave her behind, or you take the buffalo meat.
You let her go.
Yeah.
That's where the Colts are at right now. The hard decisions.
Whatever great plane I pulled up at, there was no buffalo. Now, I was lucky to get a shot at the buffalo. I had a lot of squirrel meat, and we was traveling.
Yeah, that's because me and Mike already came through and took it all.
Yeah.
That is true. We were out here stacking that buffalo meat for the fam.
You were late to the party.
Snooze you lose, bucko. The Oregon Trail's a zero-sum game, baby. Zero-sum game. The poor Colts on the Oregon Trail, it's probably going to be an offseason where we're talking about them in the Jim Harbaugh sweepstakes as the conversations around who and when he is interviewing with certain teams is going to start to become more and more prevalent. This also, on the other side, looking at this game, it was the hilarious back and forth between the Texans and the Bears, watching their teams go for the number one pick. The Texans, by winning this game, lose out on the number one pick after being in the driver's seat for that all season long. And then after the game, responded by firing Lovie Smith, their head coach. After one season, back-to-back years, their only two black head coaches in franchise history were both fired in consecutive years after one-and-done seasons. What are we doing here? What is going on with this organization? Like, yes, obviously they were bad. They were alternating Davis Mills and Jeff Driscoll for the back half of the season. They were doing a 2-quarterback freaking system like this was college football. It was one of the worst rosters in the NFL in a lot of ways. It did have some promising young talent. Jalen Petre on the defensive side, Derek Stingley Jr., Damian Pierce on offense. The 2022 draft class for the Houston Texans looks promising. And that's about the only good thing I can say about Nick Casario's tenure as general manager, because that was the startling part to me, is the Texans, when they put out their team statement, said, we will be working with GM Nick Casario to find the next candidate for this. And I'm looking around and going, this man has hired and fired 2 head coaches in consecutive years. What part of it makes this look like he is qualified to go and pick the next candidate for this? Because yes, while he's been a part of a good draft class, he has not demonstrated an ability to go out and find a candidate that they deem able to go and do this job after a year. Seems much more like an indictment of the organization and the person making these hires than the men that he has hired who have been asked to go. I mean, David Culley got handed an impossible situation last year and managed to win 4 games. And we all looked and said, no one in their right mind, in the middle of everything that went on with Deshaun Watson and his request to get out of there and the way that that roster was in, should have won the games that they did. And they showed him the door. And then they hired Lovie Smith, tenured veteran head coach in this league, coming back at it. And they fired him after 1 year. Yeah, the team was bad. But again, we look at who was playing on that team and we say, what right did they have to be all that good? Right. They did the 2021 Lions thing where they were kind of competitive in a lot of these games and kind of scrappy. And you thought maybe that's something of a sign for the future if they can get quarterback figured out with some of those young pieces. And instead, a bad organization continues to do bad organization things like this and look hapless and look flimsy in their decision-making process.
Let's not forget that Lovie Smith was escalated to the head coaching position because he was defensive coordinator with Culley. So he was there a little bit, and it felt good to have a successful tenured coach there, but we knew this was coming. And that's why I don't like what's going on with Nick Casario and what the Houston Texans are doing as a whole. You said it already, they're a bad franchise. A lot of these franchises are trying to mimic what the Patriots have done, and they keep hiring those Patriots people like Nick Casario. And when does he get the boot? You know, when does he as a GM get the Matt Patricia at the Detroit Lions treatment?
I think I saw Greg Rosenthal tweet this, that Nick Casario being on his 3rd head coaching hire in as many years is unprecedented in NFL history as far as one GM being able to be a part of that process. The only good thing that I can say happened for the Texans this season is that they fired Jack Easterby back in October. Which, again, was very quietly done, did not seem to garner the attention that I expected given the amount of literature that had been written about Jack Easterby's rise to power in that organization and others. That's about the only good thing you can say for the process of the Houston Texans at this point. Now, there is some recent precedent, as it's pointed out. The last team to have 4 different head coaches, according to ESPN, in consecutive seasons was the 49ers, who went Jim Harbaugh in 14, Tom Sula in 15, Chip Kelly in 2016, and then started with Kyle Shanahan in 2017. Looking at that, you can see it. If you're a Texans fan, the spin is, well, they ended up, God bless the broken road that led them straight to Kyle Shanahan, who has now turned them into a viable contender every year. Looking at the Texans' given situation now, any success, if it were to follow this, would be the outcome completely bailing out the process, because the process has been devoid of anything defensible. We know last year a part of the reason that Lovie Smith ended up here is because they got chin checked on wanting to go out and floated that trial balloon of wanting to hire Josh McCown, which I wonder if after watching what happened in Indianapolis, that just emboldens them to say, well, they made the out-of-the-box hire for the interim job. Why don't we just do what we always wanted to do to begin with and hire Josh McCown? Which, again, it's not an indictment of Josh McCown. Perfect, by all accounts, awesome teammate, guy that's super well liked around the league, very smart football mind. It's an indictment of a Houston Texans organization that seemed to want to do that propped up Brian Flores as a potential candidate last year after the lawsuit hit, in a way that a lot of people looked at as disingenuous. So you wonder if, I just don't know what to do with this other than to empathize with Texans fans who have been continually let down by the decision making of the front office of this team. And that is all I'll say about that.
That is all she wrote.
Aubrey, what do we got coming up next?
We have Dolphins, Jets, 11-6. We have Mike Rich Flex McDaniel doing it again.
Yeah, Rich Sweatpants McDaniel out here balling. The Dolphins end up making the postseason coming off of this win here. Questions about Tua Tagovailoa, because this game was Joe Flacco on the Jets side versus Skylar Thompson, the third string quarterback for the Dolphins on the other side. Brandon, for that reason, I'm going to block this. We will have much more conversation about what Tua's future in general looks like now. I think it's very interesting to consider what's going to happen, because there were people wondering, would he have played if this was, in the postseason or what have you? But now that's going to get real. But in the meantime, this is just kind of a gross game where, I don't know, the best thing you could say is Mike McDaniel as a play caller mustered some really creative runs in there and looked every bit like the right decision they had made at head coach.
Yeah, I was going to say, oddly enough, I'm happy for Mike McDaniel to get to the playoffs in his first year. Like, it's going to be pretty big going forward.
In a world where Brian Daboll wasn't, I think, the runaway winner for Coach of the Year, I think Mike McDaniel would have gotten a much stronger consideration for the job that he did in Miami, also walking in to an incredibly difficult situation not of his making. So we'll keep it moving. Aubrey, what do we got next?
Panthers, Saints, 10-7. And again, this is my secondary team. I'm in Charlotte. The only thing that really kept them alive here, defense.
Yes, we knew that defense chock full of talent. They turtled into at one point, 8 offensive linemen on the field rushing attack around Sam Darnold after trading away the franchise and Christian McCaffrey, trading away Baker Mayfield, who they had brought over in a trial and error move this season. Steve Wilkes, though, got this team to finish second in the division.
Man, some are calling for him to just take over.
Some would be me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and by some I mean me. I just didn't want people to come after me.
I understand that there's other coaches out there, but he seems to be getting that team to do what you would want a head coach to get the Mike McDaniels of what we've seen for the Miami Dolphins. It seems like Steve Wilkes might be that for the Carolina Panthers.
Maxed out a roster that, again, organizationally, they had tried to put in a place where it wasn't going to succeed. They were selling off parts to this team. So Steve Wilkes deserves a ton of credit for that. He deserves a very real opportunity to keep that job. We'll see with David Tepper and company, because the question there is going to be, what do you do at quarterback? And no, it is not Sam Darnold. That was fun down the stretch. He is going to keep being employed by this league.
Hey.
Again, the Hope Kotick, the Hope Kane. You don't want it. The Hope Kotick.
That's just
hey. PJ Walker, okay, no, the guy who's completed the longest touchdown pass of the NFL regular season, even though it was in overtime. I think PJ Walker has put his hand in that, but I know we said we was going to block that, but I think I'm going to call that a light tackle. We light tackled that.
All right, there we go. We came at that one special teams tackle there. Aubrey, what do we got next?
Steelers, Browns, 28-14, and Pittsburgh, just still not making the playoffs.
Yeah, so this one, we'll tackle this one, but I think quickly. This will be like a light tackle, too, because, yes, the Steelers end up not making the playoffs because of what transpired with the Bills and Patriots and the Miami Dolphins winning their game. So they were X'd out of the AFC wildcard picture. But that was happening while that game was going on. And they managed to go out and get a division win to ensure that once again, Mike Tomlin remains inevitable. This was the easiest bet I made all weekend. The Steelers -2.5 in this game, because if it is Mike Tomlin versus the potential of a sub 500 record, Mike Tomlin is going to win every time. He remains a coach without an under 500 season on his head coaching resume during his time at Pittsburgh. They got better and better performances from Kenny Pickett down the stretch. I mean, you could say a lot about what the future looks like with him and the development we saw at the end of the season as well. But Brandon, this all seems to point back to Mike Tomlin just being able to work his unrivaled magic on this team.
Yes, if the old takes exposed would chase this podcast, I've said multiple times to anyone talking about Steelers, like, okay, Mike Tomlin's is getting ready to coach his first losing season. Like, where do you think his mind is at? Not the case. Not the case. 16 seasons, all of them winners. Even the way he finished out this one, Mike, it was, I don't know. I feel, I want to give credit to him, but that Pickett to Pickens combo is real in the AFC North. It's a little bit of Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow light right now, and obviously they've done a lot of things to get that type of lauding. But Pickett to Pickens,
well, and it's an interesting comp because certainly Kenny Pickett, kind of like Joe Burrow, not the most physically gifted arm, not the most dynamic runner, but both can be effective in those ways. Kenny Pickett certainly displayed a lot of the same ability to create on the move that he did in college. And George Pickens, incredibly gifted, incredibly physical receiver, built different all-star, maker of circus catches that Brandon will come on here and poo-poo the following day as average. The biggest question for the Steelers now this offseason, I feel like you got to move on from Matt Canada as offensive coordinator. I just don't feel like you've managed to get enough out of him, Najee Harris, all of the, shifting and tackle over stuff that was built on the way in. I just don't know if it's going to be the way forward. And then on the other side, the Browns, I wonder if there's going to be any worry this offseason because Deshaun Watson never really looked good on the back half of this season as he was playing his way back off of a 2-year hiatus, obviously because of his suspension related to the sexual assault allegations against him, the 24 some odd allegations that turned into an 11-game suspension by the NFL. The football bet of that for the Browns right now does not look like a winning ticket. I know this is a long-term play for them, but there was nothing about the returns they saw this weekend around a team, or this season, around a team that Jacoby Brissett was able to keep afloat that looked like the player that you backed up a record-setting NFL contract for. So TBD on that one. Aubrey, what do we got coming up next?
Broncos Chargers 31-28.
Block.
Yeah, we'll block this one. Just amazing. They tried to do the Tampa Bay Buccaneers phase players out of the starting lineup thing here because they couldn't improve their playoff stock either. And when you're the cursed team, you cannot fuck around with that stuff. Like Joey Bosa leaves in the second quarter after kind of an awkward play, who was a player that spent time on IR due to injury this year. Mike Williams left with a back injury that thankfully doesn't sound like it's going to be too serious, but a player that's been perennially injured for you. On and on down the list, we're looking around in this game like, dog, you coach the haunted house. You cannot operate this the same way as everybody else. We just talked about your team trending the right way in injury. You got to be careful with this stuff, Brandon Staley. So that made me nervous this entire time watching a game that didn't matter. Broncos country, let's ride. Aubrey, what do we got next?
We have 49ers Cardinals 38-13. And JJ, I have so many things to say about this. One, I feel really old. Two, he's just like one of my all-time favorites, and not for like obvious reasons where girls are just like, oh, he's so hot, or he's such a great player. Yes, all those things, kudos to him. But there was this quote this one time, I don't even remember, it was so long ago, but it's always stuck out to me. And somebody was asking him basically like why he wasn't dating, why he didn't have a girlfriend. And he basically was like, I'd love to have a girlfriend. They deserve so much of your time and energy. They deserve to be treated like a princess. And I know I couldn't give her that right now because I'm giving it to football. But when I'm ready, I'm going to give somebody that. And I was like, wow. I still went out and dated a bunch of toxic people. But for him, I was like, what a guy. I probably won't find that guy, but what a guy. And ever since then, big fan.
Love that journey for him. Not for me, but I love that for him.
Else, it's perfect.
It's funny, Aubrey, because that's exactly the reason why I despise him for so long, because he's always trying to win the damn press conference.
He's a great guy. He means what he says, though. He means what he says.
I can say that man listened to every bit of that Fort Minor. He didn't just do that for clout. That man was bumping Fort Minor when the cameras were off. It was 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will on the bus, on the plane. That wasn't just for the Hard Knocks audience.
So nasty, so gross. But yes, outside of JJ Watt, yeah, I'd like to block this one. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I would like to block this one too. The 49ers are who we thought they were, an absolute wagon, and they are going to be a devastating force of nature in the NFC playoffs. That's a scary, scary team right now. Brock Purdy continues to just throw touchdown passes. This Cardinals team had nothing against it here. Let's keep it moving. What do you got, Brandon?
Seahawks Rams 19-16. And the Rams just really have a lot to think about after this.
Yeah, we'll tackle this game for sure. I am happy for friend of the podcast and noted Seahawks fan Mina Kimes that her team gets to be in the postseason. But goddamn this Seahawks team for keeping Dan Campbell's Detroit Lions out of the postseason. These games were all linked. The NFC wildcard picture that involved the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Lions. The Packers and Lions game, which was flexed to the Sunday night game, were all dependent outcomes. The Packers were the only team that controlled their own destiny. The Seahawks needed exactly what happened. A Seahawks win in their game against the Rams, and then the Lions to beat the Green Bay Packers in order to get into the postseason. So once Seattle won their game, the Lions were eliminated from postseason contention going into Sunday Night Football. So damn the Seahawks for that. But also, wow, what the Seahawks did is so wildly impressive. The fact that they are going to the playoffs with their Pro Bowl quarterback in Geno Smith the year after trading away the franchise face in Russell Wilson is insane. I don't know if anyone had a better 2022 when we look back on it than Pete freaking Carroll. This isn't quite Tom Brady going down to Tampa and winning the Super Bowl, unless Seattle somehow pulls that off as a wild card team here. But it's damn close as far as the way we talk about the relationship between player and coach that were linked for so long in a successful duo and tried to figure out who was more deserving of what. I think we're not quite done yet with the Russ story. We'll see what happens as they get ready for a new coach out in Broncos country. But the opening stanza, decidedly a dub for Pete Carroll, who has at multiple times this year, him and John Schneider and that front office looked incredibly smart for being able to know their personnel, both in Geno Smith and in Russell Wilson, who they were willing to get rid of, let walk, and say, we'll take on these other things, we'll get the picks because we believe now we can make this work without you.
I need seasons like this to happen because as a player, I constantly downplay the importance of head coaches at times, especially when you have like some big players that do a lot of big things. But hell, to see what Pete Carroll did with Geno. Now, obviously, he wasn't injured or anything. I'm our comeback player of the year. He just was on the bench chilling. But I hate these new record-setting things because there's an extra game that's being played, obviously. But for Geno Smith to set the franchise record for passing yards for any franchise. Obviously, Seattle Seahawks traditionally don't throw the ball a lot, but for him to do that there is huge. 4,282 yards, and I don't know. I'm so happy for Geno specifically. Like, I don't care how this run ends. This gave Geno put a battery back in his back, and also dangerously put a battery back in Pete Carroll's back.
Yeah, it really did. And Pete Carroll, who is somehow like the oldest coach in the league, it's a total Wizards trick because he looks incredibly young. It absolutely creates an interesting dynamic now because, going into this offseason, do you re-sign Geno now and try and address other areas in your roster? He's certainly played well enough, I think, to that standard. Now, you're not going to break the bank for him, a guy in year 10 who just made his first Pro Bowl, but definitely seem viable in this offense. You've got some good young pieces. They got back to drafting guys well late. Tariq Woolen on the defensive side has been sensational for them. In the defensive backfield, they had a pair of rookie tackles that performed really well for a lot of the year. So they did get back to doing what this franchise had done well at the beginning of that tenure, which is finding guys in the draft and doing a really good job identifying talent as well. Right. For the Rams, Sean McVay's future, what?
I was going to let you segue to the Rams by saying two words, Quandre Diggs, which I think is a perfect segue to talk about the Rams and Baker Mayfield, because Parker Fleming, who came on this podcast, TCU, last week, had the perfect tweet. After Baker Mayfield threw that crazy interception that Quandre Diggs came out of nowhere and took, he said, when someone asked me about Baker Mayfield's football career, I will show them this play.
Yes. It is the reminder that as we talked about him as the next Ryan Fitzpatrick, there are plenty of not so sweet moments in that. And this is a good, sobering thing. Like we talked about for Sam Darnold, his compatriot from back in the Carolina Panthers days here. Neither are going to be the answer for your franchise going forward, despite one incredible game that as we write the story to this season, that Thursday night game where Baker Mayfield came over on a plane, had 20 minutes of practice and somehow won, will belong to the annals of history. Mm-hmm. That might be a lot more about the Las Vegas Raiders, who have most of the embarrassing losses of this season all under one roof in one franchise. But Baker is not anybody's answer. And right now, the Rams walk into this offseason with just a bunch of questions. Questions about Sean McVay, their head coach. Jordan Rodrigo over at The Athletic wrote a phenomenal piece on the decision-making that will go from here on out for Sean McVay if he wants to keep coaching. He's someone who TV companies have courted over and over again to try and get in the broadcast booth onto the set of any of these shows. The Rams certainly have an uphill battle in front of them. Would that prompt Aaron Donald to think any more differently about his career, who flirted with retirement last year? Matthew Stafford has said he's coming back, but would that change any of that? Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, has been linked to the Kentucky offensive coordinator job again and has said he hasn't made a decision on that yet. So there's just a lot hanging in the balance for this team based on, does their head coach, who's been one of the young wonderkins in the NFL and part of the Shanahan-McVay coaching tree for a while, decide to actually not hang it up, but take a break that we talked about a lot last year. A lot of these are going to be recycled conversations from last season, but with some added emphasis because this team was woefully disappointing relative to winning the Super Bowl as their standard last year.
Like JJ Watt, I'm excited for Sean McVay to go focus on his girlfriend,
Wife.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Good.
They're both married now. Married guys now.
There you go.
Off the market.
But yeah. So, but that one we'll talk a lot more about that. I think in coming days as we get into more of the hirings and firings that'll happen today, traditionally in the NFL, or the firings that'll happen today in the NFL. And Sean McVay, again, I encourage you to go read Jordan's piece. It's a phenomenal look at the psyche and what's gone into Sean McVay's thinking, according to people that she's talked to, sources that have talked anonymously on this front here. It's going to be fascinating to watch for a team that went all in, fucked them picks, got what they wanted, and now is dealing with the aftermath. Much like when Goku started going Ultra Instinct in Dragon Ball Super, having to deal with the physical ramifications after the fact is always a humbling moment in the series. Sorry, had to get that in. Aubrey, what do we got next?
The Giants got humbled. Eagles, Giants, 22-16.
I'm going to block this one for time's sake. Jalen Hurts back in the lineup. Nick Sirianni said he was playing through some pain out there, but CJ Gardner-Johnson back. The Giants were playing no one in this game. They couldn't do anything with their seeding here. And so for the Eagles, they got that bye week. They're the 1 seed in the NFC. They won the NFC East. And so for Avonte Maddox, Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts, all good opportunity for those guys to get an extra week of rest, and we get ready for the real football.
Moving on. Cowboys, commies, 26-6.
Yeah, I'm actually, for time's sake also, we'll talk a lot about the Cowboys this week because of the Cowboys. I'm going to block this one. An embarrassing end to the season for the Cowboys here, who dealing with some injury on the offensive line. Tyler Biadasz, their center, went out. They had to kind of reshuffle some things in that group, which is not great heading into this week. Wide receiver looked slow and inconsistent. Dak Prescott turnovers have been an issue, but Sam Howell, a rookie, coming out there and being able to help be a part of that, get some really good moments on tape for him, especially in the second half of that game. His ability as a rusher showing up there, a couple of nice deep passes as well. That was an ugly game for the Cowboys, who were already going to be the subject of a lot of people's uncertainty because they're the Cowboys in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning. That was one of my bad picks from yesterday. I tried to get rid of the Cowboys a long time ago. I need to listen to myself. But shout out to Sam Howell. First pass in the NFL career, touchdown.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I mean, had a couple of legitimately nice balls mixed in there, and they did some of the, triple option stuff with him down by the goal line. I said I didn't think he was mobile enough to be really viable against speedy defenders in the NFL, and shame on me. Shout out to Scott Turner and that team for putting him in some situations, especially in the red zone, where that can be a huge aid to you, and helping out a young player by meeting him halfway on his skill level there. I still think it's going to be depending on when you're listening to this podcast, I'll be very curious what Ron Rivera's job status is. At that point, you had the embarrassing gaffe last week where he wasn't aware that they weren't eliminated from playoff contention. And, you've got the nice break glass of emergency of, well, look what our rookie quarterback showed. If you give me some time with him, maybe this can be the thing, as they did a wrong bet on Carson Wentz that didn't work out with them this year. But I still wonder if that's going to be too much, and Major Tutty is going to be having someone new on the sideline with him this upcoming season.
This next game, made me think of this one time that I worked at ESPN and John Gruden was there speaking. And I asked him a question, and his answer had absolutely nothing to do with the question that I asked. But I do remember his answer, and it was literally just mental toughness. And I was waiting for something else to be said. There wasn't. Mental toughness. And that makes me think of the Lions here.
Ooh. The Detroit Football Lions, a poster child for quotes that just lead back to mental toughness no matter what the question was asked about there. Quintessentially Gruden, by the way. But yeah, the Lions, I mean, this team started 1 of 6 this season and then won 8 of their last 10 games. And again, they knew going into Sunday Night Football, because of the outcome of that Seahawks game, they were eliminated from postseason contention, and they did not blink. Dan Campbell said as much early in the week. He said, we're either going to have a chance to go for the postseason or get to play spoiler. Either way, we get a chance to win a game. Before the game said, this does not affect our mindset here. We're going to go out there and show people that we are a force to be reckoned with, that we are a real team, and they did just that. They turned most of this game into a rock fight here. Jamal Williams, Brandon, you talk about records that fell this weekend here. Jamal Williams, in a franchise that once employed Barry freaking Sanders, is now the Lions single season record holder for rushing touchdowns in a season. He has been a revelation this year, going all the way back to Hard Knocks and balled out on that one. This team, man, dropped their freaking nuts continually over the course of this game. But the final drive that included a screen and lateral for a big game that set up a first down, and then the 4th and 1, about 2 minutes left in this game, they were up 4 and could have kicked a field goal to go up an even 7 points and made it hard. And instead, lined Jared Goff in the shotgun, went 5 wide, and let him pass to DJ Chark for the first down to end that game. Brandon, they don't give a fuck. It is the most endearing thing about this Lions team. They play with such a beautiful, reckless abandon because they are so confident in their identity. We talk all the time about this conversation. No one is going to talk about the analytics of that moment. They're going to say, because again, it went well. We only do the analytics thing when it goes bad. What it is, regardless of what the numbers say in a lot of these spots, is aggressive football. And part of that you could say is fueled by the fact that they knew they had nothing material to play for anymore. So why not go for the win? Why not try and just go out and rub your rival's nose in it and make sure if I can't go, I'm going to take you with me? They made a decision in that moment to go out and win the game, and Dan Campbell all year long has done just that. Empowered his team, told them you're winners regardless of what our record says right now, and they believed it all the way to the tune of a winning record, even if it doesn't end in a playoff berth.
True, Mike. I do believe that they may give some Fs, and it's just that they trust Jared Goff a lot more than anyone else has ever thought to attempt to. And obviously his play is let you do so because he hasn't thrown an interception in weeks. But shout out to Jared Goff. I have to say that.
Shout out to Jared Goff. Shout out to Kirby Joseph on that defense who just keeps intercepting Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
He cannot physically stop intercepting Aaron Rodgers. It's the only thing that sustains him, apparently. That defense picking off Aaron multiple times in this game. Kirby Joseph, I believe, had 2 in this game, 1 that was taken away by penalty, and 1 in their first matchup this season against Aaron Rodgers. That dude knows something that we don't.
As well as Aiden Hutchinson. Like, I like watching him play because he is so raw, and he's going to get so much better. But he is really good.
I think Aiden Hutchinson was actually, to me, everything I expected him to be.
Really?
Because he's a prospect whose coming out was defined by. I thought he was a little less raw than you. I thought he was a guy that came out with some pedigree because that Michigan D-line was coached well, and he's a high effort and energy guy. I will be interested to see what his ceiling looks like, because I don't think Aiden Hutchinson and like Travon Walker went number 1 overall for a reason, because he's got otherworldly physical gifts that they believe can morph into something more. Aiden Hutchinson, the interception total, 3 interceptions on the season, I did not have on the bingo card. That was a hilarious subplot to all this.
That's my thing. I think the nose for the ball and the ability to get there is something I didn't expect him to be so effective at first year.
Yeah, so you're right. But again, speaks to the entire culture built there. I'm happy because it means Dan Campbell and this streak means he is going to continue coaching them. I would imagine Jared Goff, we talked about this with Trevor Sikkema on this podcast, seems like a prime candidate for a guy that you extend for a little bit, keep around on that team while you continue to rebuild other parts of your roster, because the offense was elite this year. I know they struggled a little bit away from home at times. It didn't quite look the same way that it did indoors at Ford Field, but you've got a young, really talented offensive line in a lot of key spots, running back room that clearly balled out. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a star this season in a year where you traded away one of your best weapons and TJ Hawkinson, your tight end. Didn't matter. So you got to go out and improve the defense more this offseason, continue to draft or acquire talent on that side of the football. But it is very exciting to think about what this team is going to continue to be capable of in this division. Brandon, on the other side, Packers got some questions to answer too. One of the big moments of the game, Quay Walker being ejected for an unsportsmanlike penalty and an altercation. Now, there was a Lions player, I believe, that was also ejected in this moment. I don't remember, because Quay Walker was the one that got ejected for pushing one of the Lions training staff members. DeAndre Swift had taken I think we are going to end up not talking enough about the forearm shiver DeAndre Swift took to the head coming across the middle of the field from a defensive tackle from the Green Bay Packers, and was down on the ground getting checked. DeAndre Swift, Georgia guy, Quay Walker, Georgia guy. So Quay was out there kind of checking on his dude, and one of the Lions training staff members came over and attempted to get in there by DeAndre Swift. In the process, put his hands on Quay Walker. In general, I'm a proponent. I didn't like how much he touched him there. I don't think it was super forceful. I don't think he meant a lot by it. But I think in these high-stress environments, it's incumbent a lot on the people around the gladiators inside this to make sure they're not putting hands on the merch much. So I could have done without any of the touching there.
Right.
But Quay Walker's response, completely over the line there, shoves him. That is a lack of impulse control on that play. Got to know better. Gets himself ejected. You saw Matt LaFleur on the sideline saying you've got to be smarter than that, like clearly frustrated because Quay Walker had done this before in Buffalo on the sideline earlier in this season, and it ended up costing them in a pivotal moment of this game. And so, again, Quay Walker shoving a training staff member, just a no-fly zone, and you saw him kind of grappling with that as he walked up the tunnel after too.
Well, was it Reed who gave the forearm shiver to Swift? Because I believe once the pushing and shoving of the medical training staff person started, one of the defensive tackles for the Green Bay Packers, I think it was Reed, got in that trainer's face after Quay Walker had pushed him. I was like, whoa. Like,
no, it was the trainer that got in Quay Walker's face, which was the hilarious. It was the only funny part of this to me is that after Quay pushed him, the trainer like walked up to him a step like he was going to do literally anything.
Yes, he is going to do something because he's from Detroit. He's like, what y'all doing? What are you doing? You ain't put your hands on me. But that's the thing. That's why I thought it was interesting that the defensive tackle from the Packers decided to intimidate and kind of do a little chest bump thing to an athletic trainer who was there to tend to the person y'all just effed up on the field. Like, it felt a little bit like everyone was on the same team and everybody had helmets on. It's like, no, there's a difference here.
Yeah, no, there very clearly was a difference. So bad moment there. No fly zone for Quay Walker, but everyone around on support staffs also don't touch the players in any form or fashion ever. Again, I'm not saying that guy deserved it. I'm not saying it was really over the line, because I made sure to go back and watch it a bunch of times. And I think he was just kind of trying to do what we all do, like kind of work your way by there. But it's also, these guys are out there butting heads every freaking play, man. So Quay Walker, don't do that anymore, man. You're too good to not be out there on the field for your team. But the real story of this, Aaron Rodgers walking off the field arm in arm with Randall Cobb after this game, answering questions about his future in Green Bay. Brandon, it seems like the writing's on the wall here that these teams are in line for at least... There seems to be so much conversation and thought about it. Play-wise, I thought it warranted them coming back. Aaron Rodgers is under contract for another year. I think he played well enough during the majority of the season where the offense had to develop with some of those young parts. But him saying, I'm going to take some time where the emotion of this wears off before I make the decision after. Adam Schefter posted the clip of Jamison Williams, the rookie wideout for the Lions, asking Aaron for his jersey after the game, and Aaron saying, I'm going to hold on to this one, indicating this one might be a little bit special to him for some reason, potentially. It just, again, is another offseason where this guy, either retirement or playing for another team, seems to be very seriously considering his football future. Brandon, I would just say this at the end of all that. Like, if you asked me to bet right now, do I think that Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay next season based on what we saw at the end of that, which seemed like a very, Aaron Rodgers being hyper aware of everything makes me feel like he did that for a reason. The camera following him and Randall Cobb up the tunnel, arm in arm, and all of this that felt very much like an ending, to me seems like this is a guy that's ready to potentially move on here. So if you asked me to place a bet right now, I wouldn't feel good about it, but I would think that Aaron Rodgers is not back with the Green Bay Packers based on the way that this has looked and the way that this ended this weekend.
This season may be an example that he needed a break.
Again, I think based on the way he played, you could absolutely justify running it back with this team. I think the defense was the problem more often than not playing up to their standard. The offense took way too long to lean in full time to the ground game that was their overwhelming strength, but they were getting their offensive line back healthy for the majority of the season, and very well publicized the young wide receivers. Christian Watson, who had a great catch in this game again and has come on really strong in the back half of the season. There's a bunch of signs that indicate that the Packers could probably be pretty good in a year where the Vikings have not been that good, and next year are going to have some questions that they've got to answer even as a playoff team. The Lions are on the come up. The Bears have the number 1 overall pick, so they're certainly not a huge credible threat right now. There's a bunch of reasons to think that Aaron Rodgers coming back could have a very real shot at winning the division next year if he wanted to.
But my opinion is the defense was as bad as it was because there's no money to give. I feel like Aaron Rodgers sucks up a lot of air in the room when it comes to the contract so much so that the defense will always be trying to catch up.
Well, I know, but the reason I disagree is they spent first-round draft capital all over that team and all over that defense.
All over that
secondary
defense,
littered with former first-rounders. The front row now, Quay Walker, first-rounder, Devontae Wyatt, near top-end draft pick. All these guys, there is talent there that we said on paper, plenty of people, not just me, pundits everywhere, that this should be a top 5 unit defensively going into the season, and they were anything but that this year.
Yeah, but it's all first-round, our first contract talent. There's very seldom that you get to Jair Alexander's.
I'm just saying, by pretty much every universal analysis, we looked and said that defense was supposed to be a lot better than it was. You can ask questions about the coordinator, which will certainly get asked this offseason. But the point is you're right. Even if they do need some seasoning and they're young, next year everyone involved that we just talked about will have another year of that seasoning,
okay.
And you would still have a quarterback that's not falling off a cliff ability wise that could come back in the middle of all that. So. We'll, again, get to talk a lot more about his future as the week goes along. The wildcard slate coming up kicks ass. It'll be 49ers Seahawks, 4:30 on Saturday. Chargers Jags is the nightcap on Saturday. And then Sunday will be Dolphins Bills, followed by Giants Vikings, Ravens Bengals, and then the Monday nighter, Cowboys Bucks in primetime. God help us all. Brandon, it is Monday around here, which means it is time to give out some roses. In addition to what we've done here, we've already gone long talking about everything else. So we'll try and make sure that we don't turn this into a James Cameron. into a James Cameron movie here. I still will not see Way of Water. We give out roses here, deserving performers from the weekend. Each of us gets 2 roses here for people that have balled out in this process. Brandon, I'll start things off, and I know this will be something that speaks to you in your soul. The Dolphins made the playoffs, but Christian Wilkins wins the rose. Their defensive tackle, the former Clemson star, finished with 6 tackles in that game, which brought his season total to 98, which is the most in a single season by a D lineman since 94. I get the extra game thing. He plays freaking D tackle and almost had 100 tackles. That's a modern marvel, Brandon. You know that stuff does not happen. No. And I get that the Miami Dolphins play an attacking style of defense, but for him to make the kind of plays he did, splash plays behind the line of scrimmage at that position, is uncommon and freakish. And we watched a player have an ascendant season into that conversation with the guys in that group just below Aaron Donald as far as the defensive tackles in this league.
Yeah, we just came off talking about the Packers, who have one of the best defensive tackles there with Kenny Clark there in the middle. But I didn't even mention him because I knew this was coming. Wilkins. Yes, thank you. What he did this season, what he's done since he got there from Clemson, has been loud, quiet, and effective. I think, and I'm simply at awe of the amount of girth and the motor behind that man to take on all those blocks and all that, and then still just be as athletic and hungry and talk about having a nose for the ball. No one has a better nose for the ball as a defensive lineman than that man.
Girthy motor, terrifying force.
Yes.
Who do you got for a rose, Brandon?
Well, actually, I'm going to stay there because I was going to do something else, but we're going to stick with the defensive lineman because I have to give respect to J.J. Watt. I have to renege on all the hate that I've put towards him. I do still believe that T.J. Watt will be the better brother in the NFL history books once it all is said and done. But there's a screen, there's a full screen of J.J. Watt's accomplishments that during the Red Zone broadcast that I was like, oh, I've been wildly disrespecting this man to a degree that, and I respect all these things that he's done. Okay, NFL since 2011. Watt's rookie year, most sacks in the NFL. He's 4th on the list with 111 and a half. Obviously, he had a sack in this last game as well. Most quarterback hits is what I very, very respect. Number 1 in the NFL since he came in, 313. Shout out to Detroit, 313. Most tackles for loss, which is my biggest thing, especially for interior linemen, 191 in 149 games, Mike. Number 1 in the NFL. And then there's all those games for like the little, he did it quicker, he did the quickest first 5 seasons, this, that, and the other, and all those other accolades. Obviously, he was on a very, very bad Houston Texans team that had nothing else to do but let him get his rocks off as a defensive lineman. But I do want to show respect to J.J. Watt because he was amazing at being an eater, defender, the ball batter. Like, he was just an amazing defensive lineman the entire time he was in the NFL.
Incredibly complete. In a world where Aaron Donald doesn't exist, he's the best defensive lineman of my lifetime, and he's still going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. What he did in the Houston community, helping with hurricane relief so famously in that spot, and as Aubrey pointed out, having very favorable quotes about how to treat the women or significant others in your life. JJ Watt, go off, King. We appreciate you.
I will make a correction. It seems like this on this graphic is 114 and a half career sacks. 2 times he led the NFL in sacks.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? So congratulations, JJ Watt. Cool to see his brothers Derek and TJ both take that picture pregame wearing his 99 jerseys there. I saw JJ tweet that he'll have, hopefully be able to encapsulate his thoughts later, but just said thank you to everybody. The sport changed my life, all that good stuff. So congratulations. It'll be a different world without JJ Watt in the NFL, who's playing really well down the stretch of the season for what it's worth. Looked like he had more gas in the tank, but health scare at the start of the season certainly will make you rethink some things. He's got a wife, he's got a little baby now who got to be at his Sunday night game in Arizona. That was one of his last home games. So different priorities. Brandon, my second rose goes to South Dakota State. The FCS National Champions. They win in the Dakota Marker game, which obviously isn't for the Dakota Marker, but against their rival in North Dakota State, who has been the perennial power in the FCS championship realm for ever now at this point here. North Dakota State lost for the first time in its 10 FCS title game appearances since they moved from D2. So every time they have got there, they have won the damn thing. And their rival managed to go out there and put it on them enthusiastically, 45-21 in that game here. John Stiegelmeier, their coach, has been there for 26 seasons. South Dakota State's only previous SCS title game appearance was in a last-minute loss to Sam Houston State in the spring season. Remember that the FCS teams got moved to the spring of 2021 during the pandemic year, and so they lost to Sam Houston State in that one. But other than that, uncharted territory for the Jackrabbits there. Big-time win for them, so congratulations to South Dakota State.
Great rose, Mike. Had no idea about any of that. Thank you. Here's something that everyone had everything knew about already. My second rose goes to Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines, who took the first play, kickoff return, 96 yards for a touchdown. Bills, obviously, against the Patriots. And then in was it the third quarter? Yes, third quarter. 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Another kickoff return for a touchdown, 101 yards. You mentioned that was the first time since 2010 that one player had 2 kickoff returns for a touchdown. I think he deserves my rose, definitely. Love special teams, tip of the spear.
We love that. Nyheim Hines, big pickup for them, awesome contributor and author of one of the most poignant moments of the weekend. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to the Bills. Winners in that, winners of the rose here. Brandon, speaking of winners this weekend, boy was back. The gambling front here, I don't want to jinx myself, but the last 4 weeks now, positive win percentage when it comes to the picks here. This weekend, I had Minnesota -7 against Chicago, easy money, winnable game. Nathan Peterman, collision course. Buffalo -7 versus New England was a lock. Picking against the Bills was a fool's errand this weekend. Lions +5 against Green Bay. Great about not betting the do not pass line against Detroit and against Fun. And the Steelers -2.5 versus Cleveland. Took L's on the Seahawks, Rams over under at 41.5. Took an L on the Jags -6.5 against Tennessee. But overall, feeling good about the weekend, Brandon. How did the New Year, new picks go for you?
Not too well. Not too well. I was very proud of you. I ended up 500 on the season, right where I should have been. 12-12 after the Browns let me down. I tried to fade you by going against Mike Tomlin. That was a dumb decision on me. So the Steelers finished that game off strong. The only win I actually got was Cincinnati Bengals -7 against the Ravens. That was safe.
Yeah.
But the Dallas shit in the bed with the Commanders. We saw that game ended, and then the Jets. Like, honestly, if you just don't let one of those field goals happen, I win this thing. But, I bet on the Jets versus the Dolphins because they had +2.5. I like that line. But I saw stuff I didn't like. Eyes were too big for my stomach. End of the season, 12-12.
Hey, there we go. I am 52-59-4 on the end of the season here. So still trying to scratch and claw. We'll see if the postseason can get me over 500 for the year. But it's an uphill battle I've created for myself. So, Brandon, we will try to at least go further on that end tonight. We got the national championship tonight. Georgia against TCU at SoFi. I will be going to the game. Very excited for that. At the time of this podcast recording, Georgia on DraftKings Sportsbook is a 12.5-point favorite in a game where the over-under is at 63. So, Brandon, I am going to go for this one. Final score, and I have been fortunate to cover this TCU team multiple times this season. I have a lot of love for them. It's been an awesome story to watch, but unfortunately, I cannot pick them to win this game. I like Georgia to cover, and I like the under in this one. I said Georgia 38-24. In this game, I think TCU keeps it very close for a half, maybe even 3/4. I think Georgia is just it's a BFS win. Like, they are just so deep with talent. It's not to say, again, wave bye-bye to the antiquated notion that TCU is not big enough or does not have athletes at positions. They've got really quality players. We talked about the defensive back room. That's going to be a big factor in this game. Again, we talked about their offensive line that across the board, as was pointed out to me, bigger on average than the Michigan offensive line that we were loving up going into that game. This is also about depth. And when you look at a team like Georgia, the depth of that kind of size and talent is the staggering thing that ends up costing teams on these stages here. Georgia managed to overcome in the semifinal round and get to this point against an Ohio State team that gave them their best punch. TCU's managed to do that all year. I just think Georgia, at the end of the day, too much on all fronts, and they end up getting the win on this one in a game where they cover, but the under hits. So what about you? Are you excited for this game, first and foremost?
I'm excited. I'm going to pick TCU. I'm going to pick TCU. Oh. For somebody that lives with high functioning anxiety, I do love the unexpected. So I'm going to go TCU. But I think the thing here is, Georgia's their defense is second, right? So the thing here, I think, is Georgia would have to slow down Max Duggan. Duggan and company is going to have to stop Georgia from making big plays.
Yes.
I think that's what's going to happen here.
That is the worry, too, because Georgia doesn't get after the quarterback super well. And on the other side, TCU makes a ton of big plays. I think they're second or first in college football in plays of 50-plus yards. They've made, in big moments, including the semifinal game, big plays like that all year long. But Georgia's defense and Kirby Smart, you're right, super capable of going out there and making you pay. They need the turnover luck,
if anything, this is going to be a really great highlight reel. I think there's going to be a lot of really good big plays here. But again, for me, I want TCU to win, but slowing down Max and then they're just going up against that defense, that scares me. But either way, whatever happens, Georgia is, I feel like, the next dynasty. That even if they did lose, that talk's still going to be there.
100%. Repeating is very hard, as they've talked about, but they're trying to be the first team to repeat since the 2011-2012 Bama team that I lost to when they made that repeat bid. So, Brandon, who do you got here?
To answer the question, no, I'm not excited about this game because as a college football fan, I know the semis are the exciting thing to watch, and usually not the national championship game.
Not traditionally, no.
Right. I said no. I'm not.
Oh.
I don't like it. I don't want it, and I don't care. But I do think TCU is going to win. I think they're going to win 31-28. I think the big plays are going to be what's it. And as you said, Aubrey, just expecting the unexpected. I think Max Duggan, I won't say should have won the Heisman, but I would say could have won the Heisman in the sense of Hart as well. And I like Hart winning the national championship. That's what Stetson Bennett had last season. He had all those accolades and that great defense and all that, the NFL defense.
Say, Hart did not win him the national championship.
He had Hart in the arm. Yes, he did.
And one of the greatest defenses in college football history.
Okay. 11 Harts. Oversized Harts that need to slow down eventually. But I think that it will be TCU that wins this game.
All right, listen, if TCU manages to pull this off, it would be one of the greatest college football stories ever told. I always think of when we were kids, I believe it was Sports Illustrated that used to run ads for, hey, so-and-so, your team just won the national championship, and you could pick up the commemorative copy of it. The commemorative copy of the TCU season review would have to be the size of the freaking Bible, because the stories that you would have to tell off what they were able to pull off would be just that. It would be freaking biblical. This is not quite David versus Goliath, but it's pretty close as far as the odds for this. This is the largest championship spread since I think the 2002 BCS title. So we have not gotten something where the odds have been this small in favor of one team in quite some time. So it would be incredible. It would be an awesome story to tell if TCU won. And on the other side, quite frankly, if Georgia's able to win back-to-back, to Aubrey's point, now we are truly kicking off the beginning of a potential new dynasty and all of the things that come along with that as college football playoff expands. So
we'll call it the smart
everybody
start.
Wins. Ooh. Wow. Smart start, Georgia fans. Feel free to run with that one. Aubrey's giving you free game right now as you're barking at people around the Los Angeles area, storming the tailgate lot you're not supposed to be in.
I just want royalties on the t-shirts. That's it.
You gotta get.
I'll put my Venmo on my Instagram.
Yes, exactly.
Please send me t-shirt
she'll put the Venmo
royalties.
and the Cash App links. Yeah, that's her IP. Do not steal her intellectual property. Speaking of our intellectual property, guys, Brandon, do you know what time it is? I was wondering how you were going to land that plane there. Vitamin C, getting everybody right, making sure to prevent both scurvy and the scaries after graduation here.
Amen.
Don't cry because it's over. Smile because college football season and the NFL regular season happened. And as always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating. Tell Brandon what a phenomenal job he's done getting you all in your sentimentals and feels as we head into this moment here. Brandon, it is time for this, that, and the third. And why don't we start this off? We talked last week about a story involving the start of legalized sports betting in the state of Ohio, which, welcome. DraftKings Sportsbook is excited to have you guys here. Feel free to come and legally place sports gambling bets unless you are a member of the NFL. Because then you might F around and find out the way Bernie Kosar did. The former Browns great quarterback violated the league's gambling rules as an employee of the Cleveland Browns, forcing the team to fire him ahead of the season finale against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The team released a statement that said, quote, "Earlier this week, we notified Bernie per league policy that we were required to remove him from our pregame radio coverage for the season finale after he violated the NFL's gambling policy by placing a bet on an NFL game." Like,
you don't bet on your career. You don't. There's things you don't bet on. Your life, your career.
Well, if you're going to bet on your career, bet on yourself. Take a chance. Put yourself out there. Go and put yourself in a situation where you succeed. Don't literally gamble away your career, at least on this front now. Thankfully, Bernie Kosar has a podcast that he does already. He's got some other stuff that is like his other lines in the water, so to speak. But he placed a $19,000 bet on the Browns as part of an ad campaign for a sports book there. And this is obviously, as we've seen in the case of Calvin Ridley, in the case of receivers coach for a team that escapes me right now, that gambling, especially on the NFL, especially on your team, has been a no-go in this league. Do I think that coaches, I think the receivers coach who got popped was betting on the NBA or something, which I think is lame. I think you should be able to bet on other sports, but I can understand why someone who is technically a team employee betting on that team is a little bit problematic in ways that you got to guard against.
I wish I could have been there for the phone call, like when they had to call him in and to like tell him that he was fired.
It was probably an email. Let's be real. He was like he placed the bet. Got a text that an email was coming. They checked. He was like, "Oh shit!" Like, has he not watched anything from like Kurt Herbstreit or Chris Fowler? Like, I'm calling this game, so I can't say who I think's going to win. Like, that's the same level of energy. Like, if you're going to be calling the game, you can't place a $19,000 bet on it.
Well, and like as part of an ad campaign, like he put it out there on State Street. There wasn't even any attempt to be cool about this. He just dropped it in Roger Goodell's lap. Like, what are you going to do?
Wait. The tweet, though. Steelers game day, yet once again, I was informed by the Browns that my services are no longer desired or needed. I will not be doing today's radio program. I am shocked and disappointed. Brown and orange is my life.
Like, I don't understand, because for the guys that are part of the radio broadcast there, you're around the team a fair amount. And I'm sure for Bernie as a former player, he's around the team. And the one thing in these NFL locker rooms, there's like a wall in every NFL locker room that's got a bulletin board, notices, all that stuff that tells you this is what your uniform is supposed to look like per NFL rules. And this is what happens if you get randomly drug tested. And these are our policies. And this is our gambling policy, which is don't freaking gamble. All of that is right out in the open in every facility. And this policy, again, has been oft discussed because of other people that have already been popped for this. And so to not only do it, but to then do it and make it a part of some big campaign that everyone's going to see, I award Bernie Kosar brownie points for...
No pun intended.
Yeah, I say brownie points here for being brash and supporting sports gambling in a way that we love on this podcast, but it just doesn't seem like you read the manual on this one, sir. Mm-hmm. So tough look there. Again, Bernie's got other things, and who knows how. I don't know what the suspension situation looks like for that, if he can ever be a Browns employee again. But for everyone else, let this be a cautionary moment here. If you are employed by the team, maybe just discretion is the better part of that.
This is like when the ask for forgiveness, not permission, goes wrong.
Yes.
This is where that can go very wrong for him.
Yeah, because the man just lost $19,000 betting on the Browns and lost his Browns job.
Also that too. Yeah, might not be a winning ticket. So hopefully the sports book that was paying him for this paid him very well for this promotion in the meantime. Brandon, let's get to that. Aubrey, the Miami Heat and Brooklyn Nets played a game this weekend where Kevin Durant ended up injuring his right knee. He's expected to get an MRI on Monday, which is a tough blow for a team. I know we haven't dove full on into basketball season yet, but the Nets had won 18 of their last 20. They were top 2 in the East. They were finally realizing the hopes and dreams of this team that all do kind of hinge on Kevin Durant playing at an MVP level. So get to watch now what it looks like and wait to see what the results of this are to see how long Kyrie Irving may have to carry this team now.
As someone who had to watch Kevin Durant be the only person carrying that Nets team when everyone was out for whatever reason, I think he deserves his little time where Kyrie has to, be the leader on that team and be the main point bucket getter. So, hey, was it ball don't lie? With the Patrick Peterson, or not Patrick Peterson, Jalen Ramsey, this getting that penalty for knocking out Geno Smith as he was acting like he was in pain, and then they missed a field goal. Ball don't lie. So I think this is a ball don't lie moment in the NBA.
Well, this isn't even the first time. This is the third time, right, that he's had to miss an extended period of time for knee injuries, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, Kevin Durant is someone who already has famously much more severe lower body injuries. True. A lot of that stuff. Now, in this instance, when it happens in a moment like that, hard to really connect all of those, but sometimes those lower body things can be connected. And it's a worry. He's a 7-footer, so lower body injuries for 7-footers, even a guy for him who's a lot lighter than the most we think of there. You hope for his sake, you hope for that team's sake, because when it's been about basketball, the basketball's been pretty good for the Nets, and that's kind of what we've been waiting for in this whole process. But let's get to the third and get to the more important part of this conversation. I believe it's Denhurst Colin. You may recognize him as the viral meme sensation, the Popeyes kid from back long ago in the magical year of 2013 on Vine, when a young kid in the Popeyes line was reacting with that side eye to a stranger that had filmed him. He is now a college football player. He was a first-team all-conference player that is now enrolled at Division II Lake Erie College as a lineman. And Jim Weber tweeted this out yesterday and said the Popeyes mean kid is now a freshman O-lineman at D2 Lake Erie College. And if this guy doesn't get an NIL deal by tomorrow, the Louisiana Kitchen needs to clean house on upper management. Brandon, now, Colin had tweeted this out before. After his state championship for his high school team in East Orange, saying he was ready to talk business. I just wanted to amplify this yet again and give this young man a moment. This feels like something that needs to happen. There needs to be this happy ending here where we see this man helping sling Popeye's chicken in the process here, because all it's doing besides that is making me feel very old that young social media stars from our lifetime and our adulthood are now turning into grown people in a way that ages me greatly.
Yeah, the blonde girl, the one where the face is she's in the car, she's looking at you like that.
Oh yeah.
She's grown now too.
No.
Oh yeah, imagine.
Oh, that was this is where we need Daniel Tosh back for this, because this is what he used to do, was just round up the internet people and see where do the VH1 behind the music for them.
Just the Chocolate Rain guy. That was great when he brought the Chocolate Rain. Yeah. But this makes sense to me though, because as a young boy with a very large soda can in his he had about a medium cup in the Popeyes meme. It was a large cup in that little hand. It seems like he frequented the Popeyes because he's about 6'1", 330, Mike, and we know I showed up at Notre Dame around that exactly. 333 to be exact.
Yeah,
and it's rough. It's rough sledding getting down from there. So hopefully Popeyes can fund his weight loss as well, because we want him to be around as much as we want little Terrio to be around. You remember Terrio? Ooh, get him! Ooh, get him! Ooh. I'm just glad that the little fat boy that on the meme has actually become a football player. That's what I want from him.
And if Popeyes doesn't step up, maybe somebody else. Bojangles.
That is true.
Churches, Chick-fil-A, somebody.
Ooh.
That's
Panera.
That's what we need. Fast food bidding war for this young man here.
Like
He's
that.
earned it. Again, his contributions to GIF and meme culture means that he needs some reward on the back end. We gotta
Cash
see
and
him
chicken. We want to see this man get cash and chicken.
Cash
Damn,
and chicken.
Skippy.
Put that on a t-shirt too. Aubrey slinging out t-shirt ideas left and right today here. So
Just easy.
yeah, support this young man as he eats both literally and metaphorically, and hopefully gets to accomplish his goals and dreams on the football field. Support us on this podcast as you eat with us literally and maybe metaphorically as well, or strike that, reverse it. Either way, make sure you
Gotta get
download,
both
subscribe,
bags.
rate, and review. Both bags.
Both bags.
Full
Money
of money.
bags, fast food bags.
That's what we're all about around here. So make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel as well, under the Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. tab. Thanks so much. Enjoy the national championship tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Boom. Money in the bank.